This week we're moving on to the next chapter or unit, which is Unit 14. And for those of you who like to keep your contents pages up to date, this is called Further Statistics. And hopefully you should find that it's a nice break from the trigonometry that we've been doing. Hopefully you'll have seen these things before, then it's just a case of kind of looking at them and revising them. So this is going to be, there's going to be 2 videos this week. This first video is going to be talking about box plots, and then the next video is going to look at cumulative frequency graphs. But today we're going to look at box plots, which you will have seen before, but you won't, I don't think, have notes in your grey book about. Won't take you too long, and you should find, hopefully, that it's a bit of relief in comparison to yesterday. So, I think we'll start by writing down a list of numbers, and then we'll start playing around with that list of numbers to see what we need to do with them. I am going to write them in order. Now, just remember that sometimes you won't be given the numbers in order. So I'm going to write a list of numbers in order, but they might not always be in order. Right, so I think I've got 11 numbers. Okay, let's go with those numbers. So I've got 2, 3, 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, 12, 13, 13, 15. I think, or I hope, that you would be fairly happy if I asked you to find the mean or the range or the mode or the median. Now the median is the one that we're going to be looking at closest today, because it ties in best with the other couple of things that we're going to talk about. So think about how you would describe to somebody how you find the median. Now you might say cross the numbers off from each end and it's the one that you get left with in the middle. Now that's okay as a kind of colloquial way of doing it, but we need to think about a mathematical way of describing what position that number 8 is in. So we've got 11 numbers and the number 8 is in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the 6th position. So how do you find halfway along something? If you've got 5 things, how do you identify which position the middle item is in? Now, hopefully your brain's ticking over and you can tell me that the median position, so where you would find the number in the middle, is n plus 1 over 2, where n is the number of numbers. So if you've got 5 numbers, if you've got 5, you would do 5 plus 1, which is 6, and divide it by 2, and that tells you that the median is in the 3rd position. Now, it doesn't tell you that the median is 3. It tells you that the median is in the 3rd position. So in this case, look, I've got 11 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I would do 11 plus 1, which is 12, and divide that by 2, which gives me the 6th position. That tells me then that this 8 is going to be my median. Now sometimes you might start with an even number of numbers, and then you would, in order to get the median, you would add 1 and divide it by 2, and you would get maybe the 6.5 or 6.5th position, and that's when you have to then go halfway between the numbers. So there's nothing new here, we're just perhaps formalising the notation. 2 more things which I'm hoping you've seen, but which we need to write down, are what we call the lower quartile and the upper quartile. So they're like medians, but because we're using the word quartile, that's suggesting that we're going a quarter of the way through the data. So we're going to have what we call the lower quartile, and I'm going to put the word position again, because this won't give you the lower quartile number, it will give you the position. And then we're going to have what we call the upper quartile position. Now, if we look back at our list, what you'll see is that this median has split my list now into 2 lists. Now the lower quartile, if you like, is the median of this list, and the upper quartile then is the median of this list. Now that isn't a brilliant mathematical definition, but that's how I like to think of it. Now, in order to get the positions, we want to be a quarter of the way through. Now look, to be half of the way through, I added 1 and divided by 2. To be a quarter of the way through then, I'm going to add 1 and divide by 4. Now that's going to give me the position. So in this case, look, I've got 11 numbers, so I'm going to do 11 plus 1 and divide it by 4, which gives me 3. So that tells me that my lower quartile is going to be in the 3rd position, which if you look at my data is here. Now we tend to just use LQ for lower quartile. That's oh, I've written a 4. Oh, that's possibly worth noting, that we use LQ and UQ for lower quartile and upper quartile. Well, the upper quartile then, we want 3/4 of the way through the data. So if this is a quarter of the way through, then we would like 3 of those. Now remember, when you multiply a fraction by 3, you can either kind of put the 3 in front of the fraction, or you can put the 3 on the top. So I'm going to put it on the top like that. So that's telling me that in this case, I would have to do 3 times 11 plus 1, then I'll divide it by 4. So that's 3 times 12, then I'm going to divide it by 4. Now I'll probably do the 12 divided by 4 first, which gives me 3, and times that by 3. So that tells me that my upper quartile then is going to be in the 9th position, which you can see is the median of this top list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, and that's what we call the upper quartile. Now, the reason we needed to look at those things is because they form an integral part of what we call the box plot, or some people call them the box and whisker diagrams. And they're very, very simple to draw, but they rely heavily on this information. So they're going to look something like the picture that I'm about to draw. Now they do tend to sit on a number line. So if you can, draw yourself some kind of number line. I can fit a 15 centimetre ruler and my numbers go up to 15. So that works quite well. I am in fact just going to draw that line. So that would be 0, 1. So just draw yourself a number line. Possibly in the time that it takes me to faff around drawing my number line. And then we're going to draw this box plot. Right, your box plot consists of a series of vertical lines connected with horizontal lines, all of which you're drawing with a ruler. So, the end points of this picture are going to be the maximum and minimum values from your data. So our minimum value is 2. So I'm going to have a vertical line at 2, like that. And then your maximum value is 15. So try and line it up to make sure it's the same size. All my vertical lines are going to be that big. Right. Then I need a vertical line for my lower quartile. And I need a vertical line for my median. And I need a vertical line for my upper quartile. And then we have to connect them up in a specific way. But that's it. I've done my the foundings of my diagram here. So the lower quartile, median, and upper quartile form what we call the box part of our box plot, and then we just draw a line connecting to those values like that. Okay, and that's it. That's how a finish works. Now you don't need to label anything on that because we know what each line represents. We're going to label this one as our first as our example, but as a rule, you don't need to label them because by definition we know what each line stands for. But let's label ours. So this is the smallest value. Oh, sorry. This is the smallest value, and this is the biggest value. And then we've got the lower quartile, we've got the upper quartile, and we've got the median. So this is what you call a box plot. Now some people call these box and whisker diagrams, which you can kind of see why. So perhaps just jot that down, that some people call these box and whisker diagrams. You just need to be aware that they're the same thing. We'll use box plot as do most exams, but just worth noting. And that's it, that's your box plot. So the first thing, the important thing, is you need to make sure you work out these quartiles correctly. Okay? Sometimes you'll be given a table with quartiles and medians and things in, but sometimes you'll need to work them out. Now, to make these even more exciting, sometimes they give you a stem and leaf diagram, and then they ask you to draw a box plot from your stem and leaf diagram. Remember, a stem and leaf diagram looks like that. So that's 16, 17, 19, 19, etc. So this is the these are the data that you're going to be using, and you'll see that the questions say what was the youngest passenger, what's the median, find the quartiles, and then we need to draw a box plot. Okay. Now the only other thing that they mention in that question that we need to know, and it's really rather simple, is you need to know something called the interquartile range. So this measures kind of how wide the middle half of the data is, if that makes sense. So if you look at this, the interquartile range is the difference between your lower quartile and your upper quartile. So it kind of measures how spread out is the middle of your data. Because if this is a quarter of the way through and this is 3/4, there are half of the data points between these two numbers. So a small interquartile range suggests that the middle of your data is quite compact. A large interquartile range suggests that your data is a bit more spread out. But it's simply defined as the upper quartile take away the lower quartile. Okay, so that's the only other thing that you need to know for these box plots. Okay, I don't think I need to waffle on that much more about those. Hopefully that makes sense. As I say, sometimes you're given a box plot and you need to write down the values. Sometimes you're given the values and you need to draw the box plot. And sometimes you're given a load of data or even a stem and leaf diagram from which you need to extract the relevant information before plotting. So hopefully that is enough now for you to be able to have a go at worksheet 1, which is all about box plots. And as I say, there's one other video this week which looks at cumulative frequency graphs, which hopefully isn't too bad either. Anyway, I hope you're all well, and I look forward to seeing some of you soon. The rest of you, look after yourselves and watch video 2.